My name is Nora Vance. I'm 32 years old, and I spend my days looking at stones under 10 power magnification, deciding what's real. I'm a certified gemologist. I authenticate estate jewelry for insurers, auction houses, and the occasional lawyer untangling an inheritance. Tonight, sitting in the 11th row of a charity gala with a small leather folder in my lap, I had exactly 90 seconds before an auctioneer's gavel would fall on a ring that was never my family's to sell. What none of them knew, what my sister especially didn't know, was that the woman running the provenance desk at the back of that ballroom had called me twice already that week, and not to ask permission. Welcome back to her final chapter, where every story starts with silence and ends with power. If you've ever watched your family spend something that was never theirs and smile while they did it, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. Because 6 days before that gavel, I hadn't even known the ring was missing. Who I was before any of this. I got into gemology by accident, the way a lot of careful people end up in careful professions. In college, I was pre-med, working weekends at a jewelry counter to cover rent, and I got fascinated by the difference between what a stone looks like to the eye and what it actually is under magnification. Inclusions, cut angles, the particular way light bends through something real versus something manufactured to imitate it. I switched majors within a semester. My professors thought it was reckless. It's the only reckless thing I've ever done, and it's turned into a career where I spend most of my time being exactly, provably right about small, specific things other people have already decided they know the answer to. I work independently now, contracted by 2 auction houses and a handful of insurance underwriters, verifying estate pieces before they go to sale or get written into a policy. It's quiet work. Nobody claps when you correctly identify a stone's clarity grade, but I've built a reputation for being the appraiser people call when something feels slightly off about a piece's history, because I don't just look at the stone, I look at the paperwork behind it, obsessively, the way some people check locks twice before bed. I have one habit my assistant, Priya, teases me about constantly. I keep a physical binder, cream leather, brass clasp, of every appraisal certificate, gift letter, and provenance document tied to anything I personally own. Not digital scans. The originals, in acid-free sleeves, organized by date. I started it the year I turned 26, the same year my grandmother Vivian, 3 months before she died, sat me down at her kitchen table and had me formally document, in writing, the piece she was giving me. I don't talk about my grandmother's ring at family gatherings. It isn't a secret. It's just never come up, because in my family, the things that come up are always about my sister. Which is exactly why, when my mother called on a Thursday night asking if I was coming to Bianca's big charity thing Saturday, I almost didn't think anything of it at all. The call that reopened everything. You'll want to be there, Nora. It's a big night for your sister. My mother's voice had that particular gloss she gets when she's already rehearsed how she'll describe the evening to other people before it's even happened. Bianca had been on the junior committee for the Ashworth Foundation, a museum charity, for 2 years, mostly attending galas and occasionally chairing a table. This year, apparently, she'd been given something bigger, co-chairing the foundation's annual estate jewelry auction, a black tie fundraiser where donated heirloom pieces get sold to support the museum's conservation wing. She's really stepping into her own this year, my mother said. It's what family does, showing up for each other. You'll be proud of her. It's what family does. 5 words I'd heard aimed at me my whole life, always as a closing argument, never as an actual question. It meant, in my mother's dialect, give something and don't ask what it costs you. I told her I'd try to come. I did not say yes outright, and I remember that clearly, because the gap between I'll try and what my mother would later tell people I'd promised would matter enormously by the end of that night. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a while, coffee cooling, with no particular reason to feel uneasy yet. That would come later, in a phone call I almost didn't answer. Why we stopped trusting each other with things that mattered. To understand what happened at that gala, you need to understand my grandmother's kitchen table, 6 years earlier, 3 months before she died. Vivian Ashworth Vance. Yes, that Ashworth, a cousin's branch of the same family whose name now sat on the foundation my sister was co-chairing, had one ring that mattered to her more than anything else she owned. A 1930s Ceylon sapphire, 3 carats, flanked by old European cut diamonds, set by a jeweler in a city that doesn't exist under that name anymore. It had been her mother's. She wore it exactly once a year, on her wedding anniversary, even for the 11 years after my grandfather died. The summer I was 26, she called me to her kitchen table, laid the ring on a folded cloth between us, and told me she wanted me to have it, not someday, not in the will, but now, formally, in writing, while she could still watch me understand what I was holding. "Your sister loves things," she said, choosing her words with the same care she chose everything. "You understand things. I want this to go to someone who'll know what they're actually protecting, not just what it's worth at a party." We drove to her attorney's office together that week. She had a gift letter drawn up, notarized, specific, the ring, by name, described down to its GIA report number, transferred to me, effective immediately, no ambiguity for anyone to argue with later. I had it independently appraised and insured under my own policy within the month. I told my mother about the gift the same week it happened, plainly, no drama. "That's nice, honey," she said, and asked if I'd seen the photos from Bianca's engagement shoot. I told Bianca too, at a family dinner not long after. She said, "Cool, can I try it on sometime?" And I said sure, and she never asked again, and I never offered, and that was, I thought, the end of it. I kept the ring in a safety deposit box, wore it twice a year myself, on my own private anniversary of the day my grandmother gave it to me. I never once considered it a secret. It simply never came up in a family where the only ongoing subject was Bianca, her wedding planning, her committee work, her particular gift for making a room feel like it existed to admire her. Here's the part I don't say out loud even now. Some small, stubborn piece of me still hoped that one day, at some family gathering, someone would ask about the ring, would want to know its history the way I did, would understand that my grandmother hadn't just given me an object, she'd given me the one thing in that family that had ever been specifically mine. I told myself the ring's value to me was private and complete on its own. Mostly that was true. But there was a smaller, less noble hope tangled up in it too, that being trusted with something real might, eventually, make me visible in a family that had never quite figured out where to look at me. The voice that warned me. Priya has worked with me for 4 years, and she has exactly no patience for what she calls the Vance discount. The way I explain away things from my own family that I would flag as a 5-alarm red flag in any client file. "Wait," she said, Friday afternoon, watching me pull my leather binder off the shelf and start photographing pages. "Why do you need the gift letter for a gala you're just attending?" "Just being careful." "Careful about what, Nora? It's your sister's charity night. You're a guest." She leaned against the doorway. "Unless you think something's actually going on with the ring." "I don't know. I just have a feeling." "You don't get feelings. You get evidence." She crossed her arms. "If your gut is telling you something before your brain's caught up, that usually means your brain already caught up and just hasn't said it out loud yet." I told her I'd probably just have a normal, boring evening and come home early. She looked unconvinced, and so, if I'm honest, was I. But I packed the binder into my bag anyway, alongside the small case where I kept my loop, out of habit more than expectation, and drove to the gala with my grandmother's paperwork sitting on the passenger seat, like a second passenger, the night it stopped being ordinary. The invitation said black tie, silent auction, cocktail hour, dinner. What I walked into was a converted downtown atrium with easily 300 guests, a live orchestra, and a step-and-repeat banner reading the Ashworth Foundation presents Heritage, an event whose scale had clearly outgrown junior committee fundraiser some time ago. My name badge, when I finally located the check-in table, sat in a bin marked Guest General, misspelled, tucked behind badges for what appeared to be half the city's museum patrons. Just a nice night for your sister. I counted place settings on 18 separate tables before I found the bar. Stay with me, because what I noticed next, I noticed in the time it takes to check a coat. The first thing I noticed was my mother's earrings. New, unmistakably new, the kind of thing that gets purchased specifically for a night like this, rather than pulled from an existing collection. The second thing I noticed was Bianca's fiancé, David, standing near the silent auction tables in a rented tux, the shirt cuffs slightly too long, next to a display case worth, based on the printed estimates beside it, more than his entire year's salary. Performed polish sitting directly beside the seams where it didn't quite hold. The third thing I noticed was a large glass display case near the stage, spotlit, roped off, with a printed card reading, Lot 14, Salon Sapphire and Diamond Ring, C. 1930s. A cherished heirloom, generously donated by the Vance Ashworth family in loving memory of Vivian Ashworth Vance. My grandmother's ring, under glass, on a stage, with an estimate printed beneath it, $85,000 to $110,000, and my family's name attached to a donation I had never made, never discussed, and never once been asked about. I stood in front of that case for what felt like a very long time. A passing museum docent, noticing my expression, offered brightly, "Beautiful piece, isn't it? The story behind it is incredible. 3 generations, apparently." I asked her, as evenly as I could manage, who had arranged the donation. "I believe it was Bianca Vance, actually. She's co-chairing tonight. Her mother helped with the provenance paperwork." She smiled. "Is everything all right?" I should have kept my expression neutral. I want to be honest that I could have kept walking, let the evening finish, dealt with it privately in the morning. I did not keep walking. What I found alone, in a room behind the stage. I found Bianca in a small green room behind the stage, adjusting her dress in a full-length mirror, a clipboard-carrying assistant hovering nearby with a running sheet for the evening's lots. "Nora, you came." She looked genuinely pleased, which somehow made it worse. "Isn't it beautiful, the whole setup? Lot 14's the anchor piece. They think it'll go for 6 figures easy." "That's Grandma's ring, Bianca." "I know." She turned back to the mirror, adjusting an earring. "It's a family heirloom. That's kind of the point. It makes a great story for the catalog." "It's my ring." She gave it to me. There's a gift letter, an appraisal, an insurance policy, all in my name. Bianca's hand paused at her ear. In the mirror, I watched her expression do something complicated. Not quite guilt, more like a person recalculating a math problem they'd assumed had already been solved. Mom said it was fine. She said the ring was still technically part of Grandma's estate, that it made sense for the family to donate something meaningful for my first big committee event. Mom doesn't own that ring. I do, on paper. "It's not that big a deal, Nora." Her voice sharpened, defensive now. "It's for a good cause. The proceeds go to the museum's conservation fund. Grandma would have loved that it's helping something." She turned to face me fully. "It's what family does. We didn't think you'd actually mind." I asked her, very calmly, how the ring had physically gotten from my safety deposit box, which required my signature and government ID to access, to a glass case in a downtown atrium. Her face went very still. "Mom said she had a spare key from when you two set it up together years ago in case of emergencies." I had, in fact, given my mother emergency access to that box the year I opened it, back before I understood exactly what emergency would eventually come to mean in this family. I stepped out of the green room, hands steady in the particular way they get when I'm doing careful work rather than feeling anything yet, and texted Priya one line. They pulled the ring from my safety deposit box and put it up for public auction tonight. Lot 14 opens in under an hour. She called back within seconds. "Nora, that's not a family disagreement. That's an unauthorized sale of property that isn't theirs to sell, with a paper trail a mile wide. Do you want me to call your attorney right now?" I looked back out toward the ballroom, toward the display case still glowing under its spotlight, toward a woman at a small desk near the stage I hadn't noticed before, quietly cross-referencing something on a laptop against a printed provenance binder of her own. "Not yet," I said. "I want to see how far they actually let this go first." The auction. By 9, the guests had moved to their seats, the orchestra had quieted, and the evening's professional auctioneer, a sharp, silver-haired woman named Constance Reyes, on loan from a major house, took the podium. Lots 1 through 13 moved briskly, a pearl choker, an Art Deco brooch, a modest diamond bracelet. Then the room's energy shifted, and a soft murmur ran through the crowd as the spotlight swung toward the glass case. "Lot 14, Constance announced. "Our anchor piece this evening, a 1930s salon sapphire and diamond ring, generously donated by the Vance Ashworth family in memory of Vivian Ashworth Vance. Bianca, would you like to say a few words?" Bianca stepped up beside the podium, radiant, and delivered a short, practiced speech about her grandmother's legacy, about family, about the ring, finally getting to do some good in the world. My mother, seated at the front table, dabbed carefully at dry eyes. "Truly," This ring has been in our family for 3 generations, Bianca said. And tonight, it gets to start a 4th chapter, supporting this museum's incredible work. It's what family does. We hold on to the things that matter, and then we know when it's time to let them help someone else. Second time. The same 5 words, now aimed at a room of 300 strangers instead of just at me, dressed up as generosity instead of theft. Constance opened the bidding at $40,000. Paddles rose almost immediately, 50, 60, 75. The number on the screen behind the stage climbed with the particular electric hush of a room watching real money move in real time. At $90,000, with the bidding slowing, Constance scanned the room for the final push. 90,000, do I hear 95, for a piece with 3 generations of family history behind it? I stood up. The room didn't fully register it at first. A woman standing in the 11th row wasn't, on its own, unusual at a live auction. Then Constance saw my raised hand wasn't holding a paddle. It was holding a slim leather folder. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, loud enough to carry without a microphone, and the room, sensing something, began to quiet in that particular ripple that moves backward from the front. "But before this lot closes, I need to say something about its provenance. Stay with me, because what happened over the next 4 minutes, I'd already planned out completely by the time I stood up. What I did with the silence. I didn't raise my voice. I want that understood clearly, because the version of tonight my mother would tell people afterward would try very hard to make it sound like I had. I walked toward the front of the room, past tables of guests, now fully turned in their seats, and stopped a respectful distance from the podium. Constance, to her credit, didn't wave me off. She'd clearly built a career on the instinct that a woman calmly interrupting a 9-figure lot usually knows exactly why she's doing it. I let the silence sit. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Long enough that the woman at the provenance desk near the stage, the one I'd noticed earlier, rose from her seat and began walking toward us, laptop still in hand. "My name is Nora Vance," I said. "This ring belonged to my grandmother, Vivian Ashworth Vance. 6 years ago, she gave it to me, not as an inheritance, but as a formal, notarized gift, while she was alive, specifically because she wanted me to have it. I have the gift letter, I have the GIA certification report matching this exact stone down to its report number. I have my own insurance policy on this piece, active for 6 years, and I never authorized its donation to tonight's auction." A wave of murmurs moved through the tables. Phones began quietly emerging. Constance's professional composure held, but her eyes had gone sharp. "Ms. Vance, I need to be very clear with this room. Our provenance team vets every lot before it goes to auction. Denise," she gestured to the woman now standing at the edge of the stage, "can you confirm the paperwork we received on this piece?" The provenance officer, Denise Whitfield, opened her binder. "We received a signed donation form from Bianca Vance and a supporting letter from a Diane Vance listed as the estate's representative. No independent title documentation was provided beyond a photograph of the ring and a family statement of ownership." She looked up, directly at me, then at Bianca, whose face had gone the color of the tablecloth. "That's unusual for a lot at this estimate. We typically require a bill of sale, an appraisal, or a probate document." "I have all 3, I said, opening the leather folder and holding up the sleeved documents, not thrusting them forward dramatically, just steady, the way I'd present an exhibit. "The gift letter, notarized 6 years ago. The GIA report, matching this stone's exact measurements and inclusion map. My insurance policy, current, listing this ring by name and photograph." My mother stood abruptly at the front table. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, her voice pitched to carry warmth and reasonableness, even as her hands trembled slightly against the tablecloth. "The ring is part of the family estate, Nora knows that. We simply thought—" "You had a key to my safety deposit box for emergencies," I said, calm, even. "This wasn't an emergency. It was a fundraiser." Bianca tried a second time, her voice cracking at the edges. "Nora, please don't do this here. We can sort out the details after the event. There's no need to embarrass." "It's not a detail," I said. "It's an active, documented gift. Auctioning it without my consent isn't a family misunderstanding. It's the sale of property that isn't yours." Denise Whitfield had already begun speaking quietly into a small radio clipped to her sleeve, and within moments, Two museum security staff appeared near the display case, waiting. Constance, watching the documents in my hand with the particular stillness of a professional calculating liability in real time, turned to the room. Given the provenance concerns just raised, I'm withdrawing Lot 14 from tonight's auction pending review. My apologies to everyone bidding. The foundation will be in touch. Bianca tried a third time, quieter now, almost pleading, aimed only at me. It's what family does, Nora. I thought you'd be proud it was going somewhere good. It's what family does, I agreed, letting the whole room hear it, my own words handed back on my own terms instead of underneath hers. That's exactly the problem. Family doesn't take something out of a locked box that isn't theirs and call it generosity. The case was quietly opened, and Denise herself, with gloved hands, lifted the ring and carried it toward me. I'll need to verify your documentation formally, she said, but I'm not comfortable leaving this in the display case another minute. It's yours to hold in the meantime, Ms. Vance. I closed my hand around my grandmother's ring for the first time in 6 weeks, my heart finally catching up with what my hands had already been doing. I don't need an apology tonight, I said to my sister, quiet enough now that it wasn't for the room anymore, just for her. I need the ring back, and I need this family to understand that things with my name on them aren't community property. Then I turned and walked back to my seat, past 300 guests who had come for a fundraiser and left with a very different story. My grandmother's ring warm in my closed hand for the first time in longer than felt right to admit. What came apart, and what quietly came together. Everything I expected to happen, happened within the week. The Ashworth Foundation's board issued a formal apology to attendees and opened an internal review of its donation intake process, which it turned out had been considerably looser than anyone on the board had realized. 2 other lots that night, unrelated to my family, were later quietly pulled from a planned second sale after similarly thin documentation surfaced. Bianca's role co-chairing future events was, without ever being formally announced, simply not renewed the following year. My mother called 6 times that first week. I let 4 go to voicemail. On the 5th, she said, quieter than I'd heard her sound in years, I didn't think of it as taking something from you. I thought of it as still belonging to the family. I told her that was, in a very real sense, the entire problem. That in her accounting, anything not actively defended by paperwork simply reverted to whoever needed it most in the moment, and that I was done being the family member whose things were assumed to be available. Bianca didn't speak to me for nearly 2 months. When she finally called, it wasn't quite an apology. It was smaller and stranger than that. She told me the museum's development director had approached her about the piece months earlier, describing it as exactly the kind of anchor lot the gala needed, and that once the wheels were in motion, she'd let herself believe the story she was telling everyone else. I don't think I set out to take it from you, she said. I think I just stopped remembering it was ever specifically yours instead of just the family's ring. I believed she meant it. I also understood that meaning it hadn't stopped her. The quieter thing happened about a month after the gala, in a box my father dropped off unannounced. Some of my grandmother's old correspondence he'd found while clearing out a storage unit. Inside, folded into a hat box, was a letter Vivian had apparently drafted and never sent, dated the same month she'd given me the ring. 4 lines, in her precise handwriting. Nora, I gave you the ring because you are the one who understands that some things are not meant to be spent, no matter how good the cause sounds. Protect it the way you protect everything you love, quietly and completely. I am so proud of the woman who reads the fine print. Grandma. I sat with that letter at my kitchen table for a long time, not because it changed anything that had already happened, but because it was the first time in 6 years someone in my family had told me, in writing, that they'd understood exactly who I was and had chosen me for exactly that reason. What I know now. I didn't stand up that night to embarrass my sister. I stood up because I'd spent 6 years quietly protecting something precisely so that no one would ever get to decide, on my behalf, what it was worth giving away. I still have the ring. I wear it twice a year now, same as always, though the 2nd anniversary means something a little different now than it used to. And I've learned that the people who tell you it's what family does are usually the ones asking you to be the only one who does it. That's my story. If it meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe to her final chapter because there's another one waiting for you next week.